Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to episode 200 of A Healthy Curiosity. I'm so grateful that you're listening today. When I started this show back in 2016, I had no idea how much fun it would be, how much I would learn, and that I'd still be cranking out an episode on a pretty much weekly basis 4 years later. It has been such a cool journey, and I am really grateful. I learned from every single person that I talk to, and I love getting to blend with the energy of the people that I'm talking to and put my own Chinese medicine spin on the topic and be able to hopefully break down some information that's useful to you or encouraging. So thanks for being here. And it's perhaps fitting that for episode 200, I'm featuring an episode on moving from burnout to breakthrough. As you know, if you've listened to the show, that I've been trying to temper my own yang addiction, my addiction to doing too much, really, holding myself to superhuman standards, as I know many of you high-achieving kinds of people who tune in can relate to. As you'll hear later on in this episode, I now have several sets of lab tests, hormone tests, and neurotransmitter tests, in addition to my Chinese medicine tests like my tongue and pulse, that prove that I've been doing too much for too long. And this is really kind of humbling because I feel like I've come so far in recognizing that my worth isn't just about the productivity, but about the rest of my life as well. But overcoming a lifetime of conditioning and patterning doesn't happen overnight. And even though I have been working on this for years, I feel like in the past few months, I've been able to surrender yet another layer of striving, and it feels great. It occurs to me that for the past few years, it's like I've gotten really good at acknowledging when I'm depleting myself and doing too much and dialing it back, feeling better, like maybe reprioritizing rest, reprioritizing just downtime, these kinds of things that feel like luxuries or that feel selfish. I build up like a quarter of a tank of gas and then decide that it's time to take a road trip and then run out of gas and be frustrated with myself for not being able to do more. I feel like I'm really done with the pattern this time. Like, what if I let the tank actually fill all the way up? This is something I am very curious to find out. And the good news is that I've already made some of these changes. So even though I still have these lab tests that are pretty abysmal, I feel like plugging the leaks is the most important thing and getting out of that mindset, as you'll hear more about in this episode. These changes feel really right, even as they are painful. Like, for example, I really love creating community, bringing people together to support each other, to make healthy changes. And I'm really good at it. Like one of the cohorts that I've worked with from my Level Up and Inner Alchemy crew, they still get together every other week on Zoom almost a year later after graduating their course together. So I love that, but it also takes, like, if I pan back, in order to get to do that particular kind of work that I love, it takes so much effort to find people, to get the word out, to write the emails, to strike that magic balance between compelling and motivating people to invest in themselves while at the same time not being manipulative or sleazy. And that takes a lot of time and energy. And according to the hustle culture business coaches out there, too many of whom I am on their email list, the solution to connecting with the people that I want to help requires that I spend lots of time and money, thousands of dollars and hours a week, mastering everything from Instagram stories to the finer points of shooting online video, to understanding Facebook's ever-changing algorithm, to optimizing my website to appeal to both the bots that crawl the Google searchers and also my ideal clients in order to reach my true potential. Okay, did your eyes just start to glaze over? Yeah, mine too. I'm so over it. I just want to help people. If you're on my email list, you might have noticed that it's been a while since I've sent anything out. And this is a reflection of my retreat from this whole mindset. So, avoiding burnout to me is not just as simple as like, is this really in my heart to do? But also seeing the true cost of what I'm saying yes to so that I avoid dipping into my reserves on the regular. We can only tend to so many plants in our garden, and deciding what to pull up can be ruthless. But that's what the way it has to be because we just simply do not have infinite resources. And it makes these decisions of where to put our focus matter. So, right now, I'm focusing on a limited number of one on one coaching clients. I do actually have a few openings for September, about three, and seeing patients in clinic. That's it. I've shifted my Level Up Your Life program from being a group program to being a self guided experience that still has short laser coaching sessions with me. So it's far less of a time intensive investment. It's also more affordable while still delivering structure and strategy that I know has been so effective over the years. So these decisions feel really good. Nothing in nature is constantly in a growth expansion phase, right? Everything cycles through yin and yang and through these phases of the five elements. And perhaps I've been too long in an expansion growth phase, but now I'm really enjoying the contraction, savoring the moment and the contentment, which is really fitting in this late summer time. This is harvest time in Chinese medicine, a season that we associate with the earth element. And it's about nourishment, right? The earth element is spleen and stomach. It's about integrating and feeling nourished by our lives. Because really, if we don't feel nourished by what we've created, how can life feel anything but depleting? So I'm really savoring the sweetness of life that I have. I'm appreciating the depth and quality of the relationships I have with others, the quality of my care that I extend to my clients and patients and family members, and trying to extend compassion to myself for the fact that I still have work to do in a lot of regards. Trying to let go of these external metrics like judging my worth by the number of downloads or numbers in my bank account or numbers of subscribers or whatever numbers the world tells me I need to measure the dent I can make in the universe. Because catalyzing change for people is where I come alive. And I do get emails from listeners who I may never meet thanking me for doing this show because it inspires them to make changes in their lives. People who have been tuning in for years finally reaching out to do some coaching with me or take level up or take a qigong class, like that feels amazing. So give me quality over quantity any day. And as this is episode 200, it seems like a fitting place to press pause on this production schedule, cranking out an episode a week, to give my creativity a little time to percolate and to think about kind of like what I really want to say in the next season. Also, just there's nothing like that feeling of constantly having something due. If you might remember that from being in school, or maybe if you're a business owner, that like there is always constantly a paper you have to write or a test to study for. And while I absolutely love podcasting and I'm totally going to stick with it, I am going to give myself a little freedom to not have something constantly due. So during this break, I'd love to hear from you about what you'd like the next season to be about. Like, what topics would you like addressed? What questions do you have about Chinese medicine or holistic health? What makes you tune into the show each week? I'd love to hear about it. If you want to pull out your phone and leave me an audio message and email it to hello@brodywelch.com or just shoot me an email, that'd be awesome. If you love the show, I would love to receive some nourishment from you in the form of a rating or a review in Apple Podcasts. And really, I want to just continue being able to serve and bring you information that you can use, that you can put into practice, the support and encouragement to take care of yourself, because we all need to have that same compassion for ourselves that we so readily extend to the people in our lives that we care about. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy today's episode From Burnout to Breakthrough. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and self-care strategist. And if you've listened to the show, really ever, you know that one of the main messages that I hope to drive home is that we have the right to take care of ourselves. And that a lot of times, what it takes to actually put into place those practices that help us feel our best, that help us feel grounded and centered, and like we're operating from a place of sustainable energy are things that our culture doesn't exactly encourage. When there's so many demands on our time, with our work, with our families, with social activism that we may want to be involved with now more than ever, there is so much that places where our energy could go. And we might be feeling a bit tired or even burned out. With me today is an expert on burnout. Eileen McDargh is an internationally recognized keynote speaker, master facilitator, and award winning author with experience in resiliency and leadership. Her articles have appeared in countless publications, and two of her 7 books have been awarded national recognition. Her latest book, Burnout to Breakthrough: Building Resilience to Refuel, Recharge, and Reclaim What Matters, just dropped this month in August 2020. Eileen McDargh, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thank you. And I'm very curious to see what I'll talk about.
Well, let's start with this book, Burnout to Breakthrough, burnout being a topic that I think like all too many people are familiar with. But I'm curious how you, first of all, define burnout.
Well, first, I think that I have always liked the definition that Dr. Herbert Freudenberger, who coined the word back in the mid 70s, said. And it was to exhaust one's resources. And resources are your mental, physical, emotional resources by trying to achieve some unrealistic expectation imposed upon by ourselves or society. And now, if you look at what the World Health Organization, who last year in May finally put it actually their classification of diseases, though they didn't call it a disease, they called it an occupational hazard, but it was characterized by physical exhaustion, by irritability, by feeling disconnected from the work that you do, and also not being able to manage the stresses of everyday life. So you're just kind of almost comatose. That's not what the World Health Organization said. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it. So if you think about it as exhausted, which can range everything from I need a 5-minute nap to I can hardly get out of bed. That, and also that it's not just your physical body, it's what exhausts your heart, what can exhaust your mind. And so this notion of feeling burned out is that your ability to deal with the realities of today are are weak, are lessened. And the more burned out you are, the harder it becomes. So in my book, I have 3 case studies, actually 5 case studies, that I track through from going from burnout to breakthrough. And in the interim side, to go from burnout to breakthrough is to break out. I can't get to breakthrough unless I break out and look at what I'm dealing with. They represent all but the oldest generation living right now. And for all of them, it was the way in which they approached what was going on in their lives, and also by trying to live up to expectations that they had planted in their heads about what they needed to do and the way in which they needed to work. And I'm going to put the word work, Brody, in quotes,
Okay.
because I think the World Health Organization screwed up when they called it an occupational hazard. Sometimes it is the job, the work is what is the place of safety. It's the place of, things are in order. It's the home life. It's what's going on at work that is leaving me feeling fractured and exhausted and without resources to deal with what's going on. So I want us to look at this as being a universal in your own life, that, and we can all go through different stages of burnout at different
Yeah.
times of our life.
One of the things that stood out for me as you were defining it, that even within that original definition, the phrase live up to unrealistic expectations is in there, because I think so much of what what contributes to burnout is a mindset or an attitude. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. That's why I liked Freudenberger's definition rather
Yeah,
than going back to the who, because he
sure.
didn't hold it as just being in the work. It's the way in which we go after parts of our life. And it is this head talk, first and foremost, that says, I must. I have to. I cannot stop. They'll be disappointed in me. If I don't say yes to all of these things, I'll be perceived as a poor worker, a terrible mother, whatever we want to do. But it's all the talk that goes on in our head. And so when you work with your clients, not only are you working with their physical bodies through the wonderful Chinese medicine, but you're also working with how they approach, how they think about their life, because acupuncture and acupressure can only take them so far.
Well, exactly. There is this idea that what we buy into, our dominant modes of thinking can easily cause us to do things that where we're overriding our body's natural like cues that something's wrong or something's out of balance, which is how Chinese medicine looks at a symptom. It's not something to be beaten out of existence. It's something that needs attention and tending and to get curious about to what could this mean and how could this be better and so the idea that helping someone look through the lens of Chinese medicine to identify perhaps their patterns of tendencies that whether that is perfectionism or people pleasing or needing to create their value, not valuing themselves unless they're doing or putting these conditions on being safe or on being acceptable to other people so that we're not kicked out of the tribe, so to speak.
Mm.
That all of that are the kinds of things that indeed looking through the lens of Chinese medicine can be helpful with so that we can see like where do we tend to go off track and where do we set ourselves up for depleting those inner resources of various kinds.
You used two very important words there, Brody. One was the word deplete. And when I say the word deplete, to me, what resilience ultimately is all about is energy management. Do
Agreed.
I have the mental, emotional, physical hardiness? What is energy but the capacity to do work? So what is it that gives me energy? What renews me? Remember that was
Oh
one of
yeah.
the subheads was to renew, recharge what renews me, and also what what drains me. And then how do I get that energy back? The other thing about how do we think and how do we interpret? What was interesting, and I didn't know this at the time, as when I began interviewing these case studies, every one of them got to that place of burnout for specifically what Freudenberger said. They had voices in their heads that were talking to them, and they were trying to live up to the expectations that they had of themselves from these voices in their head, whether it's a first generation millennial rather, from India to a woman who's highly placed within the pharma business, but she's the first one who ever graduated from college out of her family. So, oh my God, these are all the things I have to do, and I'm the first woman over here. So if I'm the first woman over here, I have to prove, I'm the groundbreaker. I'm the one that everybody's going to look at. It was fascinating to me. It was fascinating, and we've all done that. Part of it is wanting to feel like you said we're part of the tribe, and if you're the first out in whatever that looks like, whether it's the first native born Canadian, or you're the first woman in the pharma company, we do those things. So understanding what I think of as the personal prompts, and personal prompts can be first off the voices in our heads. The other thing that I think can be a personal prompt is the way in which we see ourselves doing work. And what I call the technology tyrants, that what puts us into overwhelm is all this technology. And I've got to be on this phone all the time. And I might be working on something over here, and suddenly, ding, here's an email, or ding, there's a text, or ding, and we stop what we're doing. And for many people, particularly millennials, they take great pride in being multitaskers. Well, we were
Which is
not
of
meant,
course not a
we were
thing.
not meant to be multitaskers at
Right.
all.
Right. And that each time we have to shift gears, it takes more time to refocus, which is depleting, right? It's like
It's
we're
depleting
we're
and
pinging our brains and we're using up valuable energy.
well, and it can take, they're saying we have at least 20 to 25 minutes to get back on task.
Oh
Oh, guess
yeah.
what? There's another ding. I just got off of that. So what do?
Yes.
We work harder and we work longer because instead of being focused on the singular thing we need to do. And this, I mean, and we've all done this.
Oh
We go
yeah.
at all of these. It's what I call SAD, situational attention deficit disorder.
Okay, I like that. And it's
I call it SAD, situational attention deficit disorder. And so while we're trying to keep all of these things going, stuff happens, and you can tell when you're in it. Let me give you some examples, Brody, and
sure.
you tell me if you can relate to this.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'll do a simple one. You walk into a room and you stand there and you think, I came in here for a reason. I'll know it later. I just don't know it now.
Hmm.
Have you ever done that?
I have done that.
How about this one? You look down at your calendar, you look at your day timer, your smartphone, whatever you look at, and it says, let's say it says Brody Welsh. And you're sitting, I have no clue who that is. I have an appointment here, but I just don't know who that is. It's gone. It's gone. Um, because we have so much. Or this is one that I have done. Actually, by the way, the things I'm telling you is I've done these too. That you get very busy being busy, which we do. We're busy, busy, busy. I got so much to do. And so you dial a phone number on your cell phone. And while you are waiting for that phone to be answered, you start doing email. And so that by the time the person says, hello, you forgot who you called.
Yes,
Your
exactly.
brain went out your nose.
Right. Right. You're not necessarily working with any sort of mindfulness or
No.
and your energy when it is like I like to use the analogy of the garden hose being sprayed directly on something versus the garden sprinkler with, 100 different outlets for the water. And so it's like you really our energy can be this focused spray or it can be dissipated. And the more notifications and things buzzing and things demanding our attention and demanding that we shift gears or pay attention to them, then of course like that our circuitry is going to feel a little fried. We're not going to have the bandwidth to just focus on the one thing that
It's
we
true.
intended to do. The way that I've been experiencing some degree of that distraction, I can tell when I get into that state because I think I lived in it for years and am only like and
You've lived in the state of burnout for
yeah,
years?
yeah. Like, I mean, I think I as my loyal listeners will know, I've been on this journey of trying to do less than I'm humanly capable of for a very long time,
Hmm.
and this idea of subtraction and letting go of what is non-essential does not come easy to me because I do derive a lot of sense of self through getting stuff done, and I like helping people and I like teaching and I like coaching and I like parenting and I like having a life and I like being in a band. I like having all these irons in the fire. And yet I also do have the lab tests that prove that I'm in a state of depletion, right? If I look at my neurotransmitters, if I look at my hormones, like I literally got a test back the other day and I just started crying because I felt like if this was someone else, if this was one of my patients, I would be like, sweetie, you have to stop something. You have to slow down because like clearly this isn't working for you. But the thing that I actually meant to share is that I was hiking with some friends a few weeks ago and we were walking by a river and it was a beautiful day and the river was rushing and that we were in the forest and the air was clear and we were having a lovely conversation with a lot of silences in between. And this is I noticed that something was different. And the thing that was different was that I was having the experience. I was just there, feeling the sunshine and the wind and breathing the air and listening to my friends when someone said something. But I didn't have running in the background, what am I going to write about to my list? Or like, what's my next podcast conversation? Or like, whose formula do I need to research? Or like, just the sort of like background noise in my thoughts, kind of like a refrigerator hum that you don't even know is there until the power goes out. And then you're suddenly like, wait, what's missing? And so for me, that idea of having that part of my brain was not somewhere else thinking about how to produce and be in action mode. I was simply having my own experience. And I think it had literally been years since I'd had that experience. And frankly, I deserve to have that, like that. It's like, not only, I'll often use the rationale with clients who feel like self-care is selfish and like breaking out of that mindset, but just that we deserve to have enough energy to not only do the work that's on our plate, but to enjoy our lives and to be present for those moments as well.
Isn't that the book by John Kabat-Zinn, Be Here Now?
Be Here Now. Was
Is that his, or
I
is
think
that
that was
Ram
Ram
Dass?
Dass.
That might have
Yeah.
been Ram Dass.
Yeah, I think it was Ram Dass.
And
But
it's
yes,
basically wherever you go, there you are.
yes, that too. Both of those, I think, are relevant here.
But that's so interesting, Brody, because isn't it fascinating that all of us, myself and you, both of us, we teach what we need to learn.
Oh yeah, yes, we do.
We are our own case studies.
And that, I think, is the other part of it. Like that, I assume. I haven't read your book yet, but I'm excited to. But that there's this in the title, you hint that burnout moves to breakthrough. And so like, what can we learn from paying attention to like noticing, okay, I'm exhibiting this irritability or this exhaustion or this disconnection from my work, the things that you were mentioning earlier. When we find ourselves there, like, what is the opportunity?
Well, the opportunity, first off, you said something about you got lab tests back.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
looked at them, and that was a uh-oh to you, whatever
Well,
that
it's
was.
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of confirmation, but of some things that I've known for a while, and certainly from a Chinese medicine standpoint, I can learn. I can take my pulse. I can look at my tongue. I can assess my energy. But somehow, just having it there, quantifiable, like in a different language, in a different
Sure,
paradigm,
sure.
it brought it home in a new way, and in a way where I like, because I'm the kind of person who's like, "Ooh, quarter tank of gas, road trip." Like I just that I just want to do more, and it's like, and it's so in my nature and habituated that even when I try to break out of the pattern of like, oh, I have to do this, or like even when I can like strip down away from everyone else's expectations and just take on my own ideas of what's a reasonable workload, I realize that has always been insane. Like my whole life, that's been ridiculous. And realizing like, oh, maybe I am the one with the unrealistic expectations about what I need to accomplish, and maybe it is actually okay to let even more go.
Well, you just
Yeah.
said it, didn't you?
Ah.
You just spoke. You just coached yourself on this.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so let me answer your question about how do you
Sure.
go from burnout to breakthrough.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so first off, we want to be able to identify what is going on with me physically, to realize that something is not right.
Mhm.
And then between burnout and breakthrough is breakout.
All right. Tell me
And
about breakout.
breakout is when you break out of patterns and you
Mhm.
go, oh wait, oh dear, oh, could that be it? Oh, could that be it? And so I look at a number of ways. First is, what is it that are what I think of as personal prompts. Now, what is the voice in your head? Okay, so it is your history. It is, what is it? You got to slow down enough to say, what is it that I'm saying to myself, and is it true?
Mhm.
And it's kind of using Byron
Byron
Katie's,
Katie. Yeah.
right, where
Is
she
it
says it's
true?
true. How do
And
you feel
then
if it's true? Is there
it,
another way to think about that?
right.
So first is the personal history. The second one is am I being exhausted through, because it's my own personal deal, this technology tyrant, that I have to be on all the time, that I'm on the email all the time, that before I go to bed I read every piece of email, I send out the text. By the way, that's a terrible way to go to sleep.
Oh
That is
yeah.
terrible. And you probably told all of your clients that. The
Phone
third thing is what
curfews, people, phone curfews. So important.
the third personal prompt is what I call disconnected connections. And by disconnected connections, if you think about energy and you think about an energy grid, a power grid, what allows energy to go from where it's first generated into the house, there's a series of connections that go between a grid. If some of those connections are broken or poor, the energy never gets into the house. So by disconnected connections, what I'm referring to is ways in which we think and feel that are separating us, that are causing these disconnections. And because of that disconnection, I don't have the energy. And it can be based upon, back again, to what my head is telling me, what my heart is feeling, what I'm doing. What I'm doing, I'm not connected to what I'm doing. So what are those disconnected connections? The people that actually when I'm with them, they give me energy. Or am I, quote, connected with people who absolutely are these black holes that when I'm finished, I just want to take a nap. So you have personal history and voices, you have technology tyrants, you have disconnected connections. The fourth that can drain us is what I think of as caretaker crisis. And for many of us, particularly those of us as we age, we might discover that we are the caretakers of our parents. And that can be incredibly exhausting as you try to hold everything else together. And sometimes we don't ask for help with that caretaker crisis. And we do things because of obligation rather than that we actually don't know how to handle an Alzheimer's mom. We need help in other ways. So there's a caretaker crisis. And the last one, which to me is also something that can drain us, is a lack of meaning and purpose. That I go through the routine of the day, but at the end of the day, I go, so what? Does this make any difference to anybody? And that is exhausting when you think that you're living your life day by day, hour by hour, and it doesn't fill your heart in some way. So that's the personal side.
This episode of A Healthy Curiosity is brought to you by the coaching department at brodywelch.com. What if what you need to feel amazing isn't more willpower and discipline, but compassion, proven strategy, and personalized support? I have room for 3 one-on-one clients this September, people who are ready to do things differently, to break out of the old patterns that keep us stuck. You know there's no growth in your comfort zone, and that real change requires getting uncomfortable. But why not feel as supported as possible as you do the uncomfortable work of creating new priorities, new morning and evening routines, new default assumptions, new conversations, new beliefs about yourself, and new habits that will serve as the foundation for showing up in the world powerfully and feeling like a new upgraded version of yourself? Head to brodywelch.com/about and apply to work with me today. So there is so much that you've just said. So starting with, if we rewind to when you were talking about disconnected connections, that it sounds like you're talking about both within us, right? Like for example, our mind says, stay up and finish this email, even when your eyes are glazing over and closing, and it's really time for you to be doing something else. Like that your mind and your body are in different places around this. Or I said I would do this last week, but I really don't want to go to this event because I just am going to be around like people who drain me or whatever. Like that would be an example of like, my heart's not in it, but I said that I would. And there's also kind of people in my world who are not necessarily adding to my energy, but people who are draining it. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Okay. So in Chinese medicine, we would put that in the fire element, that one of the functions of the fire element is the heart and small intestine, as well as pericardium and triple burner. And it's all about integration. Like the heart is, as the emperor of the body, is about, or it can also be like the conductor of the orchestra that like brings all of the different aspects of the psyche together in a unified way. So if your intention and your will and your imagination and your intuition and your sense of presence are all scattered, it's like you're not really there. So the heart has to be the one to kind of connect. Now, the next thing you talked about was the caretaker crisis. People feeling, that like a lot of us are responsible for caring for someone else, maybe a sibling, maybe parents, maybe kids these days, or someone else's, or maybe we're in a profession like the healing arts, or like a nurse or a teacher. There have a lot of people who fall into that category who are listeners. And there's this sense of like when we when we've given beyond our means, whether something is simply beyond our expertise or our capacity to give, like we can't show up for that person in the way that we might like because we haven't had any time to renew ourselves. That's an earth element thing in Chinese medicine. That earth, it's about our ability to serve and support and be loyal and generous and compassionate, but it's also about nourishment and being grounded and centered, like in ourselves, and giving that same compassion, treating ourselves with the same compassion that we would want for everyone else in our lives. And then when you talked about connection to meaning and purpose, that falls squarely in the water element in Chinese medicine. The water element it's the home of the kidney and the bladder, and also a sense of this idea of the mandate from heaven or your destiny, which is of course not something that you are like fated to do, but something that is like, it's like part of your particular gift, and it's a connection to your own unique essence. So this idea that like you were given your natural innate talents and skills and proclivities for a reason, and not living in alignment with that, or living out of alignment with that, can cause a disconnect kind of in the water element. So just wanted to draw those parallels for people with Chinese medicine, because we would absolutely say, like, plus just water element is kidneys, adrenals. Doing too much depletes the kidney and the water elements.
Mm.
And that one of the things that takes us out of balance a lot of times, is that feeling like what you were talking about earlier, maybe the first generation, or the first woman, or the first, whatever, that you feel like you have something to prove. You have to do this upward, outward driving, striving energy, because if you don't, you're letting somebody down. Maybe, like somebody of it, and especially in our racist culture, it's easy to feel like, oh, well, I'm the representative of this ethnicity or of this color, or that people are going to, that there is an additional burden that sometimes is felt. And that idea of that like, I'm going to be judged, and I'm going to be letting down other people who are members of the same group that I am, because I'm representing in this way, can feel like it's an undue burden and an undue pressure, or feeling like you have to work that much harder to prove yourself in a society that doesn't necessarily think that you can do it because of your fill in the blank, gender, ethnicity, etc. And that can be a wood element aspect of things.
So I want to just kind of piggyback on that,
Sure.
because to say that we listen to the voices in our head is not a bad thing. It's to say, at what point in time am I allowing those voices to override my heart, my emotion, my not listening to what my instincts are telling me where I'm overdoing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we call the heart the little brain, because we know that the heart actually talks to the brain. And we know that the heart has a larger energy field than the brain. So when you care a lot about something, it's not saying don't care that much, but at what point in time does your instinct say, so for right now, I must stop? And I can't help but thinking about Representative John Lewis, who talked about, oh my God, what that man did to bring to the front and to push for the right to vote, the right to sit at the same counter as a white person.
Putting his body on the line.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally. But he talked about, and I'm really loving this phrase, good trouble.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So it was always nonviolent,
Mm-hmm.
even though he was met with violence.
Yes.
But his value, his integrity was saying, how do I operate with good trouble and move forward? Now, I don't know a lot about his life, but I am thinking that to be able to do as much as he did, to reach the age that he did, he had to have times in which he said, okay, I got to stop right now. My instincts are saying I need to pay attention to my family. I understand he had a son, his wife. I need to talk to my compatriots. And certainly the last op-ed piece that he wrote 2 days before he died is such a powerful, powerful piece that says to me, He was connected. This was not a disconnected connection. He was connected with his head and his heart when he wanted to give the mantle of good trouble to the younger group that are coming up and saying, you will make this work. You will save us in this. So here was a guy who, pancreatic cancer, there's no cure for pancreatic. You're
Yeah.
gone. That's it. And it's something that does not come through lifestyle. It just is, as
Yeah.
far as I know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. But the way in which he lived his life, to me, was a demonstration that you can care about something and you know how to transmit it to other people, and that you also know when you have to step back.
Absolutely. A beautiful example. And just that yes to living in alignment, and yes to allowing your actions to reflect your values, and to step back from that and to connect with those, that we can't inhale without exhaling, right? We can't eat without pooping. We can't do life without sleeping, right? Like there always is this yin yang balance that we need to go through in order to or we get depleted, right? That there are these two forces that aren't just opposites, but that actually support one another. And it's really easy to discount what it takes to not do, right? That as Olympic athletes talk about, that the rest and recovery is where it is essential to getting better, right? Like
Yeah.
that, and any elite performer knows that it's like you can't that there has to be just a significant amount of attention that goes into how can I restore and restore quickly and and effectively in
Mhm.
order to get back to it.
I think what happens to us, Brody, and I'll put myself in this category,
Sure.
is we put ourselves in autopilot.
Hmm.
And you eat as a, oh my God, it's the end of the day. And then you say, what did I get done? Or what did I not get done? So in today's new world, and I call it new in that so many people are now working from home, we don't have this transition space between where you go to work and when you get home. It's all smashed together, which I think adds another burden, another layer on this idea of burnout, because I don't have that separation. So, one of the practical things I believe to do to begin to go to break out is, number one, to create a routine. Number two, don't put more than three things within that day. Don't create the to-do list with 25 things on it, knowing darn
Yes.
well you're only going to get two of those done. This is something I have to work on, because at the end of the day, I take a highlighter and I highlight what I did. Oh my God, I didn't get, and I'm learning, put down just three things I like, the three most important things for today.
It's so funny that you're using that example, because I teach that a lot, like that rule of three, because it's so easy to keep moving the goalposts, right? Or to think like, oh, well, I got these things done, I can do 10 more. And maybe you can, but being able to frame that as bonus time or gravy, or maybe three things that you don't have to do tomorrow. And instead, because it's really difficult to think, because the average person has about 40 hours a week of undone stuff that's sitting on their plate. And so if you're always looking at like inbox zero, everything checked off, you're never going to get
No,
there.
you
And
won't.
so being able to recognize that you've made a difference in that pile is a really important thing.
That's it. And I love when you said pile, because it reminded me of something else
Yeah.
as I look at my desk right now. One of the ways to break out and to break through is to look at our physical surroundings, not just our physical body, but our
Hmm.
physical surroundings. And if in my physical surrounding, I've got piles and papers and it's clutter over here and mess over there, just that physical sense of stuff around you can be overwhelming and can also zap your energy. So, if I want to say, how do I get back into control? How do I break out to get through breakthrough? Start with your physical, not only your physical body, but your physical surroundings. I think that's really interesting that when we went into lockdown 4 or 5 months ago, whenever that was, it seems like it was 5 years ago, How many people went through their closets,
Oh yeah, right.
decluttered their closets? How many people went through, I'm going to clean the garage today? Because first off, we wanted to have a sense of control. I can't control all this other stuff that's going on here, but where is my place of control here? And my place of control is to create order. I think human beings like order. We might
Well,
say, oh, no, 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 I love all the men. No,
yes.
you really don't.
Well,
Why,
and
why in the world would Marie Kondo be such a hot shot,
right. Well,
on the
and
magic art of tidying up?
it's essential, and it's a reflection of our values, right? That like what we choose to have in our space cues us in our environment, right? We're actually we are creatures of habit, but even beyond being creatures of habit, we're creatures of our environment. And so we're going to do what the environment cues us to do most often. And
Yeah,
when we have big piles of stuff, it can be a reflection of that, like, yeah, you don't actually know what you're prioritizing right now. Like you don't know what, like, of the 10 books on your desk or like the pile of papers, like what are you actually focusing on? And so that
true.
taking time to put things in order. In Chinese medicine, that's a metal element thing, that's lungs and large intestine. Our need for structure can be too strong, right? And where like everything has to be just so, or just
Oh, the
100%.
perfectionist
Yeah,
category.
or like the quote unquote anal retentive, like that's large intestine. That's being too persnickety about what's going on in the environment. But too slovenly or too disorganized is certainly a hindrance to being able to have an effective and efficient, being able to move through your life with ease. And so, like, yes, creating order allows us to have routines, right? Like
It
if you're
does.
and if we and without routines, we have to waste energy that could be better spent on just like automating the mundane, right? The things that we know we need to do to take care of ourselves. I am a huge fan of having on autopilot and doing first, like getting them done first thing in the morning before the world can distract you from the important work of things like hydrating, eliminating, exercising, setting your intention, meditating, writing, whatever it is. But having a rock solid morning routine that doesn't have to take forever, but that sets you up for being clear.
Hmm. And now that we're so many of us are working from home, the routine that we get into also can help us, even though we physically don't make the transition to get in the car to go someplace, we can physically make that transition. I find now that I am, quote, working from home, I'm wearing clothes that I would go to work in. I am putting on makeup. Before it was like, oh, who cares? I said, do your pajamas. You know what? It's not creating that transition. So that at the end of the day at 5 o'clock, now I can go put on my pajamas. Now I can do this other stuff because I'm making this transition. The other thing about routine, which I find very fascinating, it was Admiral William McRaven in 2004, gave a speech to the graduating class at the University of Texas in Austin. And the whole speech, it went viral. I had to chuckle when I heard it. But you know what he said? The first thing you do, make your bed.
Mhm. Yep.
Get up and make
Make your
your
bed.
bed. And it's amazing. I have a nephew that his parents do not insist that he do that. When he comes here, I
Mhm.
say, before you come out, you need to make your bed. And he and I do really well together. I don't have half the stuff that his parents do. And I think it's because we create a routine here. And that routine gives him a sense of order and comfort.
Yes. I believe it, and I think that just yes, and plus accomplishment, right? Making your bed, it's like, "I did something," and it starts the day with a win.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so what's interesting, Brody, is that what we're uncovering is that crafting together this life of our work and the work of our life, it's not major things. It's as we begin to take the small steps.
And that's I love what you were saying about just that yes, these small things, for example, to create a transitional space, like, okay, my makeup goes on, I'm now going to work, now I'm changing into my PJs, I'm transitioning, I'm relinquishing the doing, and I'm moving into this new phase. And that can be really important for us to as we might not necessarily be physically traveling anywhere. And I'm curious, like, that we talked a little bit about before the show about sort of this work life balance as not being not being a thing, right? More, and that's, there's something flawed in that conceptualization. And I'd like to hear more about how you explain that, or how you would encourage us to.
Okay. So if I were to ask a group, show me with your hands what balance looks like, inevitably they would put their hands up in some replica that looks like the scale of justice.
Uh-huh.
And balance is that everything is equal. Well, that might be what we want with the chemistry of our body. But the truth of the matter is life is not equal. It is
Right.
never going to be equal.
Right.
Balance is baloney. Get over it.
Yeah.
Instead of using the word balance, and by the way, all words create pictures in our heads.
Yes.
So that was the picture.
Words matter.
Justice.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to give you a different picture.
Mm-hmm.
And the picture I want you to think of is a little sailboat, and you are the captain. Have you ever been on a sailboat, Brody?
I have, yes.
Okay. Have you ever been in a small one where it's just you?
Nope, but I've been in like a little 2-person one.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you got the idea.
Uh-huh.
So here's what I'd like to suggest. If you're in your little sailboat by yourself, now there's a journey. We're all on the journey of life. First and foremost, when the wind comes up and shifts, what do you have to do in that sailboat?
Adjust.
You have to shift.
Yes.
You have to come about. So does the wind come up in our life?
Always.
All the time.
In fact, in Chinese medicine, adapting to change, the wind is the cause of 100 or 1,000 diseases, right? It's so like the winds of change, not being able to adapt is. So
I have to pay attention. I can't just sit in that boat.
Right.
All right. So when the wind comes up, we have to shift. Now, if you think about it, if you ever watch a sailboat and you've been in one, you do not go in a straight line from A to B. Right. It's a series of tacking. It's a series of going one way on the left, then come way on the right, and you're finding the wind. We do the same thing in our life. That sometimes I head in one direction, go, that's okay, but now I need to come around over here. Now I need to come around over there. So this notion of being able not to sail in a straight line, but to know that my life is going to have shifts and I need to pay attention to the wind. Now here's the other part of that metaphor. All of us have the same 5 parts of our boat. It is what I think of as the intellectual mainsail. That's your sail. And I think of the intellectual mainsail. That's all the work that you do. It's the role that you play as an acupuncturist, as a coach. That takes up the majority of your time. And it will look different for all of us at different points in our life, at different phases. When you were studying, your energy that was connected with how do you learn all these things was very different from what you know right now, where some of these things come quite easily because you studied it, you know it. So there's the intellectual side. There is the physical tiller. And if your hand is on a tiller in a sailboat, little sailboat, you can feel it. Well, it's paying attention to what's that physical side. So we got the physical tiller. Then I have the emotional centerboard. And in a tiny boat, it is this piece of wood that literally goes down. You can pick it up and you put it down in the center of the sailboat, and it keeps the boat on an even keel. Well, we all carry people with us in that sailboat. And so one of my questions is then, okay, who do you want to have in your sailboat? Who's sitting with you right now?
Who's getting thrown overboard? Yeah, right.
Well, yes, and who do you need to throw overboard? They just are weighting everything down. The gentleman I spoke to this morning, he has a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so his energy with a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old is going to be very different, and it's going to have different demands for this phase of his life. Mm-hmm. There's 2 more parts of that boat. There's the material, because you and I work to support a material lifestyle. And when I think about what does that boat look like, and sometimes what we get into overwhelm and burnout is I've got a boat that's got more in that boat than I ever need. And I think one of the amazing things that's happening now as we are homebound is we begin to look around and say, what is it that I really need here? Because we're looking at our economics could have shifted, our financial wherewithal could be drained. What do I really need? When you realize how little you really need, you feel a lot more powerful. And the last thing is at the end of that physical tiller, there's a little teeny thing, and it is the spiritual rudder. And the rudder, spiritual part is taking time out to connect with that part of the world that is greater than all of us, however you want to define that to be. So we all have these 5 parts. It's just that as we move through our life, my intellectual main soul, my emotional center board is going to look different than yours based upon what's going on in my life. And at some point in time, I'm going to need to spend more energy on one than the other. So for example, when my sister was taking care of her husband with stage 3 lung cancer, she's not given a lot of energy to work over it. Didn't abandon it. The abandonment is what puts us out of trouble. But her primary energy is going on to his welfare. Now, she can't neglect her own physical welfare, but it will shift. So the notion that instead of balancing and making things equal, is to say, how am I sailing in this part of my life? And where is it that I need to spend energy, attention to? But you don't abandon the other. It's when I abandon any of that, let it go, I have just fallen out of that boat.
Right. It's not like in pursuit of work in the world, you forget you have a body entirely, but it might mean that you're maybe not necessarily working out every day in the sense that you might if you were, if that were a primary focus, for example.
Right.
But we do need all these parts. I also really appreciate that you bringing up the point that balance looks different, or tacking back and forth to get where we're going, right? That this looks different at different stages of our lives, because it just, in Chinese medicine, we would use the idea of the seasons, right? That it's never winter forever, like that we everything in life cycles through birth, growth, maturity, decline, and death. And, and that every winter, spring, summer, late summer, autumn it's something that we go through multiple times in our life and in different phases, and where different things become the main focus and the main priority. And yes, to tending to these other things, but maybe dialing it back, right? That there's, because you still want to be paying attention to them while recognizing it. And that actually, for me, it softens the expectation that a lot of times people come in and say, like, oh, I don't feel like I'm doing anything well, that like I'm suddenly having to parent while working, from home, and there's, all this, and I just feel like I'm failing at everything. And I hear that from people all the time. And it's just like, wow, give yourself credit for the fact that you actually are prioritizing, or trying to prioritize, several very difficult things while not totally abandoning these other things. And if we do find ourselves like steering off course and just and not steering back in the right direction, that tends to be where things break down emotionally or physically for us, and recognizing that, like, okay, like we can't go back to doing things the same way. Something's got to give.
Well, and you used the word back, and I want to pick up on that.
Sure.
Because if I ask people to define resilience, it is to bounce
back.
And I'd like to underscore that in my definition, resilience for humans is not about going back. It's one thing if you're a piece of steel that when the pressure is off, it can be in its original place.
Sure.
Or you're a willow tree that when it bends, like boing, it's right back again where it was. You and I cannot step into the same river twice.
Right.
The water has gone off.
Mm-hmm.
So to look at going back is to set yourself up for disappointment and potentially failure. Where I define resiliency and building resilience as we move from burnout to breakthrough is, how do I grow through either challenge or opportunity so that I end up wiser, smarter, better on the other side? It's all about growth.
Well, and that's even a thing, right? Post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress is absolutely something that as we frame our thinking around this, that it's not necessarily about success or failure or like I did something wrong, but thinking about, that what did I learn from this? How can I grow from it? How can I, or if we are thinking about bouncing back, rather than thinking about it as like metal springing back into its original place, what about a bouncy ball that hits the ground and then goes off in a new direction with some new energy?
That to me is not going back.
No, it's not going back.
Oh,
It's simply rebounding. It's hit its bottom, and
yeah,
now it has an opportunity to do it differently,
yeah,
to come back up, but not
that's true.
necessarily in the same form, in the
Well,
same
that's why when people
pattern.
talk about the new normal, I want to go, there's no such thing as the new normal.
The ever evolving.
It's, well, I don't, first, we're looking for something that doesn't, it's normal.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
So, you know what? It's not going to be normal. We're at a place globally, we're at a place within our country where it is not going to go back. It's not going to go back to the way it was. And we now have the opportunity. I'm going to reframe this, which is a resiliency skill. We have an opportunity to say, how do I create the kind of world that I want, the kind of community that I want? And does not recreate. Recreate says I can take the old. It's saying, how do I make this into something that is what we all want? It can pull parts from the past. I mean, what is it, that we're learning now that families, oh my God, they never played together. Now all of a sudden they're sitting at the dining room table and lo and behold, nobody's got their cell phone out and we're doing a jigsaw puzzle, which is but guess what? Oh,
Yeah,
we're talking to each other. What
right.
interesting experience that we're doing that.
And we went to quote a meme from the internet, right? That we in a few months' time we went from baking bread to dismantling white supremacy, right? Like this idea that like, oh right, like with fewer distractions, with fewer opportunities to quote unquote
Right.
entertain ourselves, that we're getting down to things that are really important, that really matter, that maybe have are long overdue for intention and restructuring in a systematically different way that will hopefully be a world that we want to live in, that does feel like it meets more of our needs in a more equitable way.
It's not going to happen overnight, but that's why the subtitle of the book is Building Resilience to Refuel, Recharge, and Reclaim
Yes.
What Matters. And if I wanted to make it longer, I would say what matters at this phase of your life.
Right, exactly.
It
Recognizing that
would,
this
make,
is
it
a
would have made that
snapshot.
subtitle way too long. So we didn't have that thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if you have any final thoughts before we go on cultivating resilience in small ways.
Okay. So first off, thank you for using the word cultivate because and you used an ing word, ing, cultivating, which is an ongoing action verb. And so, number one, resiliency is not oh, hey, I got it. Bingo.
Right. Suddenly I'm
So,
resilient and I'll always be. Right. No.
no, stuff happened.
Yes.
It happened in the past. It's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
So, cultivating, if you think about cultivating a garden, you have to till the soil, which means I have to toss stuff up. I have to get rid of the weeds. I get rid of maybe get rid of the sow bugs that are crawling over there. So cultivating resilience, you got to till your life. You have to say, what is it that, wow, what are the weeds I'm holding on to that deplete my energy, that don't allow me to feel that I am strong, that I am capable, that I can grow. So I got to till the soil. Then you plant the seeds. Well, the seeds are how do you practice? How do you practice? Just like you build a muscle, you practice. You don't pick up a 50-pound weight the first time you go into a gym. You might pick up a 5-pound. Okay, what are some practices, some simple practices that I can begin to help me cultivate resilience? That's the seed. And of course, the first one has to do with our thinking. And this is going to sound really simple, Brody, but it is the language that we say to ourselves and the language that comes out of our mouth. Language is very powerful, which is why I said balance is the wrong word because of the
Yeah.
picture.
Well, exactly.
And so instead of saying I have to do this, it's I choose.
I choose to. That it takes us out of victim mentality. It puts us in the driver's seat, and then we recognize that we are actually connected to our values
Yeah.
and our power.
Yep, I choose to do this. So it is the small things. You can quote me on this. I came up with this in the shower a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, I don't know where that came from, but that's really good. Here it is. An inch is a cinch, a mile takes a while.
All right. I love that.
So when you begin to think about cultivating resilience, what are the events in my life right now? Don't take the biggest, darndest thing you can ever think of, but I could respond to it in a way that would make me feel more in control, more powerful for what I'm experiencing. So just something small. And maybe the small thing is cleaning out the garage because I have control over that garage.
Or maybe
And I can get rid of
maybe it's
things that I
cleaning out one box from that garage per
exactly.
day, like making it smaller so that it's doable. And that's something that in and of itself, as soon as we do that, I work with clients with this all the time, right? Of people who want to start exercising or starting to eat better or starting to meditate. It's like, just pick the smallest step in the direction of better and practice that until it feels easy. And then you take the next step. And it's like, and a lot, because in doing that, we already are making the change. It doesn't, and just that in and of itself, overcoming the activation energy that it takes to start something, a lot of times it's much easier to keep something going once it's already begun.
True.
Yeah.
It's true. So it is the small things that we cultivate, we seed, then we have to weed again, because stuff's going to come up. You got to weed it and you got to water it.
Yes.
You got to seed, feed, water, but first you got to till the soil. And then you watch what blooms. And there are times in which you're going to plant something different. The other thing is that we now know that you can literally recreate the pathways in your brain, that it is highly malleable. And that as I begin to practice saying things like, I'm choosing, we're creating new synapses. We are creating a pathway that has power to it, instead of saying, I have to. Woe is me, life is bad, life is terrible. Okay, step back, Eileen. What is it? How can you reinterpret this? What's the potential here? What's the upside? Or for right now, you might just accept it. But we know that no truer words were ever spoken than this. This too shall pass. And it will.
Yes. And one of our truisms in Chinese medicine, that the only constant is change, and that change actually has a pattern, and we can surrender to it and just recognize that that's the way it is. And the secret to life is being able to adapt to the present moment, which requires actually being in the present moment. Eileen, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and yet I know you have other things to do, as do I. If people are interested in connecting with you, where would you suggest they head?
Okay. So first off, just make sure whatever you post that you spell my name, because you can go to www.eileenmcdargh.com. There's all kinds of stuff on our website. I write a weekly blog post. I have an e-zine. Trust me, the e-zine comes out when the mood strikes, which is not very often, because I think you're too inundated with stuff in the email. But it comes out at least 4 times a year. And if I find something that I think is really valuable, then we repost it. You will find all of the books that are there. You'll find articles. You will also find ways, if you so choose, if there's something I can do for you or your organization. Obviously, this is what feeds my family, so you can give me a call on that. I am on LinkedIn. Use my name. You can link up with me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and my Twitter handle is MacDarling. 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 You can find me.
Great. And we'll put all of those in the show notes over at brodywelch.com or wherever you are getting your podcasts. Eileen McDargh, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your passion for helping people move from burnout to breakthrough.
Thank you, Brody. It's great talking to you.
Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit, and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.